Hi, everybody. It is lovely to see you all here at Data Connect, and welcome. Welcome to this session. The session using technical storytelling to influence your stakeholders. So, before we get going, let me introduce myself. So, my name is Ben Pearce, and I've worked in the tech industry for about 25 years. Probably about 20 years of those was working at Microsoft. And for about 10 years of those, I was a deep technical customer facing engineer. And then for about 10 years of those, I was a people leader. So leading customer facing technical teams, developer consultancy teams, cloud architect teams, a variety of teams. Before about almost 2 years ago, I launched my own company, which is called Elevated You. And what I'm doing is focusing on helping people in the tech world develop their human skills, develop their influencing skills, their storytelling skills, that kind of thing. Let me start. Let me start with a photo. It's not my best photo, but this photo to me um, kind of illustrates nearly every project I was involved with. Quite often I would be involved in projects that perhaps would be maybe changing the culture of a customer's development team, perhaps deploying cloud technologies, a new data platform, or a new identity solution, all kinds of different uh, solutions. And the thing that they had in common was that um, often the technology was pretty straightforward. The challenge was getting the people on board, getting the people to change, working with the leaders, the teams, the business team, the security team, the networking team, you name it. There were all these different teams involved. And so often I had to spend time actually influencing people. And that was how I got things done. The technology was straightforward. Managing, influencing your stakeholders was the really difficult bit. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And that's what I call technical storytelling. So, technical storytelling for me is this idea of how we influence our stakeholders, how we engage our stakeholders or our customers, whoever it might be, so that they listen to us and that they take action. And I think that if you develop this skill, which is a really, I think, important skill, firstly, it helps you become more influential. Okay. And so I don't mean that means, you've got a brilliant Instagram account that gets you free ice creams on the beach. What I'm talking about here is because people listen to you. I'm talking about people having confidence in your position and advice, people prepared to act on the things that you've said. And I think that's essential to be successful in the tech world. But not only influential, but memorable. So, that doesn't mean you turn up to team meetings or customer meetings and stick a cocktail stick through your tongue. But what that means is that people remember you and that they remember your message, that people don't forget your message as soon as they've walked out at the meeting, about people taking your message to heart and then wanting to do something with it, which is really important. And that ultimately then leads to your success, right? People taking action, people taking your message and executing on your opinion, which ultimately leads to you being successful. And whether that is people taking your advice and your ideas on board, choosing your architectural design, choosing your product, customers choosing your product, whatever it might be, it leads to you being more successful. So that's why I think this technical storytelling is really important. And over the next 15 minutes, what I'm going to do is introduce to you a framework, a great way to think about how you engage stakeholders and are more effective at landing your messages. And you can start using that this afternoon. You sign off from this conference and you'll be able to start using this stuff straight away. It's really useful. So what I'm going to do is introduce this framework. So this framework, AURIN, right, is a mnemonic. Every time I'm either preparing for a presentation or a really valuable meeting where I really care about, a high value meeting that I care about the outcome, um, I think about this framework. Um, it's not the flow of what you say, but it's like a reference, like a North Star, like a guiding light that helps you prepare all the content that you want to cover. And this is what it stands for. It stands for audience, objective, remembered, emotion, and next steps. Audience, objective, remembered, emotion, and next steps. And over the next few minutes, I'm going to unpack each of these in a little bit of detail. But if you remember one thing today, remember this AURIN framework. And when you're starting to get involved in creating presentations, starting to think about meetings and what you want to communicate with stakeholders, this is a great place to start. So let's step through it. And let's start with audience. Okay. A lot of people, when they're delivering a session, think it's all about me, right? So here I am delivering a solution to you, and I could be thinking it's all about me, the things that I've got to say, the information I want to share, the diagrams I want to show, the architecture I want to go through, the demos I want to share with you. But it's not. That is exactly the wrong mindset. The right mindset is to think, who is in the audience and how can I be of value to that audience? Okay. The audience is the center of absolutely everything. Okay. So what you want to do is get in this mindset that the audience is the center, and the audience is the center, right? They're giving me, or you're giving me, your non-refundable time. Not even Bill Gates, Elon Musk has got the money, or Elon Musk has got the money to buy time. So if people are investing time in listening to you, then it needs to be valuable, right? And to create valuable content, the first thing you need to do is know your audience, understand your audience. The things that you might say to a CEO might be different to the things you say to a recent graduate of a software engineering degree, which would be different to somebody in the marketing department, right? So know your audience, because if you know your audience and can understand their perspective a little and build some empathy with them, then you can be relevant to your audience. The messages that you give them will be relevant to them in the role that they're in, not from a self-centered perspective, just relevant to me as the presenter. So be relevant to your audience. And if you can be relevant to your audience, you can give value to the audience. And that's the name of the game, right? If you're going to influence people, if you're going to be remembered by people, if your message is going to be remembered, then you want to give them something valuable. That's the thing that they're going to take away. And to give them something value, it needs to be relevant. So the very first thing, and so what I do, I have a little notepad and I take this and I write down AURIN, who's my audience, objective, remembered, emotion, next steps. And I just write a couple of bullets. Who's going to be in the audience, so that I can, when I start to make decisions on what topics I want to cover, how I want to position things, I can then use that as my little reference guide. So audience, that's the first thing. Second thing, objective. Now, a lot of times I might go to a conference like this, and I might be listening to a speaker, and it's clear that that speaker knows a lot about the stuff. But what's not clear is, do they have in their mind their objective? And sometimes people do, right? Sometimes people will have an objective on, this is what I want to cover, as opposed to just a brain dump of all of these things that are in my brain. Sometimes people will have real clarity, but I'm going to go to the next step and actually go, understand the objective that you have and that your audience have. It's not all about you. So what objective does the audience have for listening to you? You know, what's the problem that they're trying to solve? What's the opportunity that they're after? What's the level of technical depth that they're really thinking about that they need to understand? So not only get clarity in your own mind as to this is my objective of my session, to make sure they understand technology X, to influence them to make decision A, to join our community or whatever it might be, but get clarity in your mind as to their objective. What is it that they really want to get out of this? And again, I'll get my notepad and I'll jot that down. Next thing, remembered. Lots of you may understand already understand this. When I really got clarity on this, it made a huge difference in the way I spoke to people. What you transmit is not what is received. Okay? What you transmit is not what is received. So a lot of people in the tech world think, I've got all of these things in my brain, and my job is to say them out loud, and then people will receive that, consume that, internalize that, and remember it forever. But of course, that's not what happens at all. You know, the things that I've said to you over the last few minutes, you've probably already forgotten loads of them. Right? And there's loads of reasons that people aren't listening. You know, we're here on a digital conference. Heaven forbid, some of you might be doing other things at the same time. You might be reading email. You might be looking on Slack. You could be doing something else with me on in the background. And that is going to reduce your ability to remember what I've said. People, I imagine, on here have English as a second language. And so people are translating in their head the things that I'm saying, which means that it's harder for them to understand. They might just be bored, right? And thinking about what they're going to have for dinner, or something might just have gone off on their WhatsApp and they're looking at WhatsApp. There's a million reasons why people do not hear, internalize, and remember forever the things that you've said. So therefore, when you're talking to people, you need to think about, what is it that I want them to remember? Okay. What do you want your audience to remember from your session or from your meeting that you're going through? And get that down to a sentence. So the first thing is, can you say out loud in about a sentence the elevator pitch, the highlight, the lightning version of your message? Okay. Because if you don't know that, then there's no chance that anybody else is going to be able to work it out, right? So get clarity in your mind. What is the key thing? And so if I start to think about this session, because I'm trying to practice what I preach here, right? So my key message is that being clear and memorable and relevant, being clear and relevant is really vital for your success. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to say. Being clear, relevant, and memorable is vital for your success. That's my key message. And then, what are your supporting facts, your supporting arguments? But no more than 5 sub-themes, and ideally 3 is best, that support your key message. So get clarity on what is the point of this 20-minute session, this 40-minute session, this meeting that we're going to have. What is the point? And let me get clarity on what that is. Now, let me divide that into 3 themes in an ideal world. So that might be, right, we want to deploy this new approach because 3 things. Maybe it's more secure, it's going to be quicker, and it's going to be cheaper, right? So you want people to remember, we are deploying this new approach because it's cheaper, more secure, and quicker, right? So those might be the 3 things. So then you've got a little bit in depth in each of those areas. There's a million things that you're not talking about. You've deselected those from the argument, not because they're not important, they are, but in this 20-minute, 30-minute session, whatever you've got, these are the things that I want you to remember. And then after that, we're gonna continue our path, and we can look at more depth, we can go into things, but I want you to remember these 3 things that are really important. So get clarity in your mind. What is it that you want people to remember? Okay. So we're doing AURIN. Okay, we've done the audience. Who's in the audience? We've done objective. What's their objective for listening to you, and what's your objective for talking to them? And then we've gone, right, what is it that I want them to remember? Because what I transmit will not be received. So I'm going to use a variety of techniques to make sure that they remember the things that I want them to remember. Next thing, and we never do this in the tech world, emotion. I imagine lots of people on here don't sit down thinking, right, I need to go through this technical session with people, or I need to give an overview of this product, or I need to talk about this thing with some stakeholders, and sit down and go, well, how do I want to make them feel? Maybe some people do, but I bet most people don't. But let me show you this quote. This quote, really important, and I love it. It's from Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. What sort of feelings are you trying to get in your audience when you're talking to them? Bored? Bewildered? Overwhelmed? I've certainly seen many of those sorts of faces in meetings throughout my tech career. Maybe you want them to feel shock at the state of the problem and the pain that is being felt at the moment and the need to change. Maybe you want them to feel hope about, hey, this is a way forward, confidence that they've got the skills and the ability to deliver it. I don't know. It's different for every session, but think about how you make an emotional connection with people. People remember things that they have emotional connections with. People forget facts, they forget statistics, but they remember how they felt. And that can be a huge springboard. Oh, I remember I felt like that. Oh, and I felt like that because they said that. And that meant that I needed to do this thing. They make a chain. So if you start to think about how you want people to feel and how you're going to make an emotional connection with people, it will massively increase your influence and your memorability. We haven't got time to go through it now, but there's loads of neuroscience studies on showing how that is the case. And we could go all the way back to ancient Greece, and we could think about Aristotle and his 3 means of persuasion, where he talks about ethos, logos, and pathos. And one of those is emotion, right? Pathos, that's about emotion and storytelling. So throughout time and modern science is showing us how important that is. And yet we often don't think about it, and often end up with faces like this looking back at us in the tech world. The complete disinterest as the first photo there, the fall on my sword resignation in the middle, or somebody getting angry, just keep going and let's see what happens type faces, all bad faces when they're in your audience. So think about how you're going to make an emotional connection so that you can persuade people, convince people, and get them to remember. Then the final bit, next steps. Often, normally, the presentation is not the end game. Okay, the presentation or the meeting is a means to an end. So therefore, what happens after the presentation, what happens after the meeting is the really important part. And so often people, in my experience, will just say, oh, can you send me the slides? And that's the next step strategy after we've been through this thing. And I put it to you that that's not the strategy. You want to be far more intentional on your next steps, and you want your and be very intentional and clear on what you want your audience, your stakeholders to do next. Now, if you're in a broadcast situation like we are in today, where there's a bit of chat, but it's mainly me broadcasting, you want to think about how do you make that as easy and frictionless as possible. So let me give you an example. Stepping forward a little bit, this is my ending next steps, but I've got in there a link. I've tried to make it very clear, connect with me on LinkedIn. Come and check out my podcast if you like this type of stuff. There's my newsletter. go and book an appointment. Very clear next steps that are as easily and accessible as possible, all from that link. So if you're in a broadcast type situation, something like that works really well. But if you're in a meeting type situation, make sure that you have set time at the end to decide what the next steps are, work out when they're going to be done by, and who's going to do them, and make sure that you get in a habit of doing that every time. Well, we're rapidly heading into the Q&A section. So what I'm just going to say is, remember AURIN, great little framework. Write it down when you're starting to think about a presentation, a session. Who's going to be in your audience? What's their objective? What's your objective? What I transmit will not be received. So what do I want them to remember? How do I want them to feel? And what do I want them to do next? So I'm going to finish off with what I've already shown you, really. If you found this kind of stuff really interesting, go to this link. And from there, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I put loads of free stuff on this sort of topic out there. I've got a podcast that comes out every 2 weeks on called Tech World Human Skills, a free newsletter every week full of top tips. And if you'd like to book an appointment with me, I'd love to work with an organization like yours on how to be more effective at managing your stakeholders and influencing folks. So that's it. We're done. So what I'm going to do is go to the Q&A and see if we've got any questions just to see. So I'm just popping in there. So the one question, where can I find the lecture after finishing, and can I find the rest? Okay, and the recording will be available. So we've already answered that one. What else have we got? Sukbir, great framework, Ben. Have to put it in practice soon. Can you build in some flexibility in the storytelling, especially if you find the audience is not being so receptive to the points that you had decided to focus on? Great question. So firstly, all the stuff that you can do in advance to research your audience can really help you. So if you can get to know your audience, so if you can maybe group them in personas and say, right, this persona, so let's say we were going to have a software engineer as a persona, we might go, okay, what sort of things do these people, are they interested in? And it is a bit reductive, but it can really help. So you can start to say, right, so you can get closer to the mark. You can also start to use things like LinkedIn to look and see what people are talking about on those topics. Also using AI, ChatGPT. You can put ChatGPT or Bing Chat into that persona, and say, you are a software engineer at a big retailer, things like that. And then ask it questions, which will help you be more relevant. So the first thing is do as much prep to understand the personas and how you can be relevant as you can. But then it's about reading the room. And it's about, it's hard in a broadcast situation like this. But if you've either got cameras on Teams or Zoom, or if you're face to face, that's really about reading the room. And if it can be interactive and it's a smaller audience and you can ask them, maybe you've chosen 3 points that you're going to talk to them on. Turns out point 2 is not relevant, but another point is. Can you bring that in? And now you understand. Can you say, actually, the 3 things I want you to remember are D, E, and F, as opposed to A, B, and C. So if you can ask questions, get interaction, and then read the room, that might be how I would change it. So often there would be a big topic that I've got. And then when I'm talking to these personas, I'll be, drawing on these big resources. And so I can therefore start to swap, and maybe they were interested in a more CEO type bit of information, or maybe I've gone too high and actually they wanted really deep information and I've gone too high level and I now need to get really deep. So if you've got a good knowledge, you've already prepped for different personas, you can then start to bring in if it doesn't seem to be landing with the audience as you'd hoped. Great question. And I'm going to say thank you so much, everybody, for jumping on this session. I hope you found it useful. If you want loads more information on that, just follow that QR code or follow that link. Thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to connecting with you in the future. So enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye-bye.